Alrighty, daily trading recap for this Wednesday, the 13th of April, 2022. Going to be a very quick one, coming in nice and short and hot today after only taking futures trades, the automated strategies that I've just been continuing to do again and again, both of them working out very beautifully. The session-wide strategy working out well before I went to bed last night of when the future session started yesterday at 1800. Yes, 1800, 6 o'clock Eastern time. And then the 9:30 strategy working out well today, too, looking for 2 points as soon as the open happens and finding that in the first minute as well there. To Christ be the glory in all of it. I'm going to go over dollar volume quick for reference for me. NASDAQ $219 billion volume on the day as of 53 minutes after the close. NYSE $300 billion volume. OTC's $1.9 billion volume on the day. No other real hard traders. Nothing huge piquing my interest. Took a little stab at BCTX. So many of these, I got up a little bit earlier, not as early as I got up yesterday, but of just trying to attempt again to see if there were any of these morning dump patterns going to be showing up today. There was just a lot of tickers that wanted to catch my interest, and it was just hard for me to pull that trigger, but then all of them, pretty much all of them, just working out beautifully to a T. BCTX ended up being one of them of the time frame of watching it around this $12 price mark as it's looking to test once again to be able to either maintain that price of VWAP or to sink underneath it. Fell hard underneath it, but reclaimed a little bit. Actually got back to the upside there, but then fell off again to continue to break hard even below the previous trading day close for a huge sell-off all the way to 848 as a low. Pretty crazy movement there, and a beautiful pattern representation of what I want to look for as a morning dump chart setup. Tried to play it as a morning dump fake out or a reversal. I've done this a few times before, and it's sometimes been successful. But just thought the feeling was there. I thought it was going to be holding too well and price wasn't dropping so quickly, so took only 10 shares. I think I had started in on this one of just a little above 1180 or so. And did see price go back to the upside of VWAP and thought, okay, great, here we go. Now it's going to potentially hold that $12 line. I wanted to see it hold there. I want to just continue to see it linger around above VWAP, maybe between this 12 and 12.4-ish range, and then eventually curve and spike to create a new high of day during pre-market there to be selling into for that little trade. That was the thesis on it for this morning dump reversal setup, to play the opposite side of what I would normally be trying to trade to the downside, but sure enough, it worked beautifully to that initial pattern that I always like to see for the morning dump setup. So, I mean, that's just what that pattern is, and that's a good reflection for me, too, of when I started this pattern. It was last year, right around this time. Started taking this specific trade and identifying, kind of seeing it play out more during April, May, June, July. And that's the hottest time when I played it, and when I became the most profitable with it was kind of pre or getting into these summer months. And here we are again now that I'm starting to see more and more of the same kind of thing pattern come about again. So it may be just a seasonal time frame type of strategy that comes around, and it just has its little niche for the year for some select few months. But that's a good note to keep an eye on if that's actually a thing, if what I'm seeing, my observation, has some merit to it. But yeah, absolutely getting back into the just nailing these and absolutely slamming them as the opportunity provides. And then when we're continuing to rake in the profits as they're working, then we can discuss okay, well, how much do we actually want to be holding these for? Do we take off a little bit of profit at 10% to just protect if some of these start to spike against, like the ticker yesterday that I recorded? I think it starts with an LIV something. I'm probably completely off on that. I don't even know what I'm talking about. The ticker yesterday that just went absolutely berserk and crazy, spiking to new high during that little morning session, halted during the morning session. Skipping my mind right now, but just to protect against that type of price action for those one-off types of charts that end up happening every once in a while, trying to play this specific pattern there. But yeah, good to see it, and great just reformation for me of now I'm in such a different position than I was initially when I first observed this potential pattern happening more and more, of now having to not have to figure out a shorting account or fund a shorting account or pick my shorting account. I've already got it, everything set up, already kind of very familiar with how to use it, just like the little technical stuff about it. So far advanced to be able to now, as that strategy is coming back, of just how much easier of a transition I can go and start to attack these more versus the kind of slowness that I did start to take initially on that aspect exactly a year ago, pretty much looking at the same pattern. Did also start to take some stabbies on the paper short side. VERU, these were really, VERU and ATER, these were really not my trades whatsoever, but just I had the thought at 1.2 in the morning as I'm just sitting there stabbing my eyes out, not holding my hands away from the keyboard, not wanting to touch anything, not really seeing anything that I so desperately needed or wanted to be in for a play. But then just saying, hey, I'm so down to just kind of fool around. And why should I not do that on the paper side? I want to keep myself accountable and say, hey, is this an actual trade, or am I investing wisely? I don't want to say investing like I'm investing in these companies, but like investing my time and resources wisely by just kind of randomly throwing in trades, or even if they are just paper trades, just what are you actually doing? What type of practice are you putting in? Because practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. If I'm just kind of being sloppy and just lazy with what I'm doing on the paper side, just kind of willy-nilly seeing charts and saying, oh, that looks like a short, let's just, because it's paper, we can do anything. Getting in that mentality when it comes time to transfer that over to the real side of it, of am I going to carry over those same types of principles? But I look at that, and the reality of it is no. I understand and know the difference between these paper trades and the just total experimental willy-nilly of, oh, that looks like a top, let's short it. Because it is just total, I'm asking for failure. I'm asking to just push myself so much farther to say, okay, wow, exactly like this chart right here on VERU and ATER of, hey, that looks like a short there. This looks like a top, looks kind of like a little fake out intraday top. Let's start shorting there. Oh, sweet, beautiful. Pulled immediately right back to VWAP. Nice little profit there. Let's cover a little bit, but let's hold a few more on. Let's hold at least a little bit of the position on to see if it just breaks any further down for the rest of the day. Just continue to let it ride. Okay, break a higher day here. Okay, shoot, whatever. Doesn't matter. All right, looks sweet. Now it's pulling back on our higher day. Maybe we tank to the underside of VWAP. Okay, well, we broke to a new high of day here again. Okay, quickly rejected after there. Letting these things play out and just letting them, because it's paper, because this is just a totally experimental, educational, fun thing, that to say, okay, what is it going to do next? I'm consciously choosing curiosity rather than this anxiety and angst and tick by tick action and absorption and everything that's going on, because I can't lose one more cent and I have to be stopping out at this precise risk level and blah, 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 all these different factors that wind me up and just get me so tight, versus how I look at it with being so loose and free to understand, wow, let's see. I mean, it's spiking pretty hard and decently soaking decent size into this afternoon here. Well, let's see if it just continues to go. Okay, shoot, it goes all the way to 14.5. If we start to break through there, okay, maybe then that's absolutely a point I have to cover. And of course, it forces me out there and just continues to absolutely rip in the after hours. These are the types of charts that, had I not played them whatsoever, that I kind of would have bypassed a little bit to say of, okay, yeah, I can maybe glean a little bit of information as I'm pulling up on the scanner at the end of the day, doing my quick little reviews and study to say, oh, wow, it's interesting to see. Maybe it pulled in a few shorts here. You can kind of identify this pattern here as it's building with volume, blah, 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 blah. And that would have been the end of it. The extent would have been looking at this chart at the end of the day, and that's all I would have seen. Versus what I've done now, just to say, I was in this. I was a part of the crowd that got screwed over. I understand this emotion as now, I say emotion, of course, it's not really the same exact emotion of actually being in the trade, but of understanding how quickly I can get underwater on these things and understand why these become a long trade. So it's just another level of experience, even though it's just, in hindsight, of course, it looks like a terrible trade. Now this gives me such a better understanding of, wow, I can now identify and see, because it was continually holding here, even though it was kind of faking out on these high day breaks, giving more incentive for the shorts to come in, how it was just continuing to hold and press and press and press. That's the reason for this catalyst, and all that volume coming in to just press it continually more and more. Wow, now I have that better understanding of it. Also very interesting to see in the chat of Jack number 2, multiple times this day, of identifying, oh, I think this is the top here. I think it's going to be a nice fade. Identifying his price targets of, yeah, I'm looking for above $12 to start getting in short on this thing, like mid 12s to play this thing for a short. I think another guy as well in there too, tag teaming along with him in that same regard. But of him just identifying the same thing, I think he actually did stop, I want to say 1254ish, maybe around right here. Yeah, right in this time frame, as it's still holding above VWAP, looking like it's putting in a higher low here, looking to test that high of day once again, that he stopped out of his short and recognized, okay, well, signs are chasing. I need to respect that and cut my position out of it as it's just continuing to hold and go against me. But for how many times it just seems with him and with, any and every trader that every single day they're just short everything. And it doesn't seem like they have just a succinct rhyme or reason, but they always end up saying I'm starting in short on this trade, but not huge position size. And then at the end of the day, it turns out, okay, I made 50K on this trade short, blah, blah, blah. After saying in the very beginning of this trade of how they prepared for it in the pre-market that, it's not really big size, just kind of speculative trade right now. Okay, when's that point that you're sizing in? And why isn't that the point of which you're just taking the full position? My mind doesn't really doesn't grasp that the greatest. I know there's a level of tactics of, getting a starter position and having some involvement in it to be able to feel out the stock and involve yourself more in watching the level 2 time and sales and what it's doing versus still just kind of bouncing around between charts and what you're watching on that day versus actually physically having involvement in something. But just on that regard too, of how they turn that so many times, it's on the surface, it kind of just appears that it's always just willy-nilly. And really on top of that as well, that it's always having to have arbitrary risk levels. That it's the same thing with this stuff, how I would normally, look at it from the perspective of, let's cut losses quickly. Okay, we have an easy identifiable risk of high of day. For this specific trade right here, me getting short at this top of, okay, if it's starting to break there at that high, I definitely don't want to be a part of it. I can see it accelerating even further past there. Then my trade idea is over. But sure enough, after having it dropped, I could have totally seen this, as Jack number 2 pointed out as well, that was his entire thesis of, after this thing had done the little fake out and tried to push through and entice in more breakout traders on that one, I think it could easily have enough dropped back to VWAP, tested this little regional low here just above $11, and then broke closer to the low day to end up closing around there. So many different variables and paths this thing could have taken, and how many charts have done a similar thing to that, of that fake out range that would have so easily stopped me out of just risking that high of day, just an obvious point. But for how many times these guys have been through that fire, and that's just what the biggest gamble of shorting is, and holding through a high of day push is, okay, where does your stop ultimately become? And what is the point of just so much pain and hurt of it going against you that you're ultimately forced to cut versus not cutting the trade short until it eventually, like all these terrible crappy companies do, just end up rolling over and dying? So that's just the tough part about it, of what I have to find within myself of what is the risk reward that I can be looking for and be taking on these over the long term of trying to trade short on these types of tickers. So that's just a continual involvement with myself. And that's the reason I think, especially for looking to take these types of short trades paper, just to expose myself more to it without the financial risk, but just to involve myself in understanding, wow, okay, I identified a top here. Hey, this is a beautiful little scalpy trade that just immediately happens, kind of lucked out perfectly, but identified, hey, this was a potential little high of day fake out breakout that just pulled back very quickly. That can be its own little beautiful trade in itself. I don't have to make a home run out of it, like I tried to do with the remaining half of the shares or whatever position I had left on it, to try to force this thing back down to $10 or even to a new low of day. But just look at it for what it is. And that's what I mentioned again, of exposing myself more and more to this through that paper trading aspect. And it's not a just willy-nilly blanket, this was as many entries and exits as I can and just go absolutely crazy without any type of journaling or holding myself accountable to it. But more so just what I wanted to do with my longs, of still be in it with my real cash account, but kind of taking a smaller position size so it wasn't so negatively affected on me financially, but how that eventually morphed into just becoming my entire trading, and not realizing that I'm here to make money. I'm not here to just continually, for the rest of the trading career, take extremely, extremely small size and justify myself because, it's a small position size, it's just an educational speculative trade. If it goes, great. If it doesn't, it's not a big financial loss. That wasn't really building me whatsoever, but I want to look at this more just as paper trading aspect for, of course, I'm not down anything. It's a paper trade, but just of the little knowledge I've gained from this, how much more valuable that is than me not doing anything on it, especially to the short side, because I can't be taking a small size short of not wanting to take the borrow fees and blah, 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 all those different factors and the day trades. all those different factors that prevent me from kind of doing that same mentality that I did with the longs of taking a small position size and just kind of justifying it as a speculative trade versus now turning it into, and now I have to go full paper with these shorts. And that allows me to take kind of what I would consider normal position size, or the position size that I want to be taking, of at least minimum of $1,000 per trade on these ones. Using that, having that number appear, whether it's red, whether it's green, on the P&L side for understanding, okay, wow, I absolutely traded this with a position size I know I can trade, and I traded it perfectly from like just this little exit here to here of how that happened, of I had a breakout, fake out, pulls immediately right back to view out. Beautiful little trade. 12 out, that's over 50 cents, 60, 70 cents maybe. On an $11 ticker, $12 ticker. Awesome, man. Take the small win and move on to the next one. So those are the things that I want to build off of more. And then learning from the things of, okay, me leaving on a position and letting it continue to break out to a high of day, not once, not twice, but 3 times, then letting it continue to rip to now a 4th new high of day after it breaks back to the upside of 14.5. If you want to count all the run up there as well for how many new high of days it was breaking at that point. But yeah, then learning from that aspect and then applying that to the next ones and just building a short trader inside of me through that. So that's a mentality that I carry with these ones. I'll mention ATR quick here to bring up that chart of thinking, yeah, we're getting a similar type of thing of we get a new high of day breakout, but it just kind of is this little fake out. So saying, hey, now it's holding here. I think it's going to be a nice little short attempt. Sure enough, it does start to fall, breaks a new little relative low, but doesn't go hard all the way back to VWAP, I want to say at that point. Reshort again at this little lower high. I want to consider it around 5.6-ish range. But as it's holding that just sub 5.4 price action, saying, okay, I'm going to go ahead and kind of trade it similar to maybe how I would be holding this one if it was an actual trade of, okay, let's take off a little position size just to decrease our overall money risk because of how well it's holding. And especially as this, if you want to call it a 4th little bottom here, that would definitely have prompted me to say, okay, let's take off a little bit more size for how well it's holding. I still think we're still not touching my risk level, but it's certainly showing signs that it could be bearish over the next, it's not going bullish. So eventually that could turn into it's not going bearish. So that could eventually turn into a bullish sign for this thing to start breaking to a new high of day. And sure enough, that's exactly what it does. And of course, as I was stepping away from the computer screen and put just random stops in this one, I figured I wanted to carry a similar mentality with VERU on this one to say, oh, yeah, maybe it'll like later in the day, maybe spike high and crazy. So I'll put like my stop at 6.5 or so around there just to say that I don't want to, at least protecting myself, but not letting it go crazy against me. Well, sure enough, that's exactly where it rips immediately, pretty much after I leave that computer screen. And that's pretty much perfectly where the top was on the day, and pulls back hard off of that one, has a little bit more consolidation, pulls back to view out, bounces off there perfectly. But that was the little high of day I was covering into. Unknowingly, I somehow picked the top to be buying into there to cover that position just randomly and arbitrarily. But that's, again, exposing myself more and more to that, just of the weakness and the flaws and just the logical side of what my thinking is on these trades, getting in with the fight more and more. I think is definitely valuable and something that I feel I have done. It's not like I haven't done this before with paper trades, but just making this a part of the process and the routine of stretching myself more and continuing to expose myself to more ideas than I would initially find. Like both of these trades, I really didn't have any bias on, or like came into the day wanting to short, but of seeing Jack number 2 and his, I kind of was cheating on that millionaire chat today of looking at it a little bit preemptively, but of seeing their ideas to say, hey, these guys are successful. Let me take a crack at it as well. Let me see if I can follow along with what they're saying, or at least get some of the amount of experience that they continually put in of just the type of returns they're getting, and try and understand what perspective they're seeing as well, to just add to, even if I do want to stay a long trader, even if I do want to switch into being a short trader, but just to get that extra perspective as well. It's certainly not going to detract from my trading whatsoever to add more perspectives and understandings of how charts work by doing this modality either. So learning lessons all around. Very thankful for the futures trading, that futures algorithmic trading, of how that's able to supplement but also keep me righted in my non-needing to trade or just trying to force money out of the market to say, gosh, I need to be making money today. It's just totally fake, because I've been doing that on the side and understanding that it's not going to be every single day that this trade makes money, as showed on Monday. There's going to be some loser days, but factoring that in of, okay, because I have this modality now I definitely don't have to feel so convicted that I have to be pushing buttons every single day. So extremely grateful for that opportunity, extremely grateful for this job. I continue to use the word job, but it is not a job whatsoever. It is the greatest occupation in the entire world. I get to wear no pants every single day, and nobody has to yell at me except my mother. But I can deal with that eventually. So I sincerely thank you guys for watching. We will catch you guys on the next one.